Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest episode of the Adopt 365 podcast. Before we get started, let me introduce my co-host. First of all, Microsoft certified trainer Megan Warren
Hello.
and Microsoft 365 business coach Anthony Charman.
Hello.
Thank you both for joining me. Today, our podcast is all going to be around those features that are coming in Microsoft 365. We're going to have a look at the Microsoft 365 roadmap and see what's made it into the roadmap and when some of the features that stood out to us are due to arrive inside your tenants. And maybe have a bit of discussion about those features that haven't even appeared on the roadmap, yet Microsoft has already presented about them. Before we get started about that, just a quick reminder that the Adopt 365 podcast is brought to you by the team at Computerworld. We are a Microsoft 365 cloud services provider. Many people at the moment are looking to renew their Microsoft 365 licensing, and I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to come to us, reach out to any of us at Computerworld or any of the hosts on this podcast to see how we could help you. For many of our customers that get their licensing through Computerworld, you get access to the Adopt 365 learning platform for everybody in your company. And there is information there created by all of your hosts of this podcast that will help you learn the best way to do things in Microsoft 365. And it can be organized and shared with those people inside your business. So just a little bit of a plug there that if you need help with Microsoft 365 or you're looking to renew your licensing, please make sure you reach out to us at Computerworld. So let's dig deep now into the content and let's see what we're going to talk about. But before we get onto the main subject, let's just talk about a piece of advice that you would give to the champions. So first of all, Anthony, what piece of advice would you give to champions for 2023?
So the thing I was going to say is be aware of the Microsoft 365 roadmap and keep an eye on it all the time. There's things coming out on there all the time. Things are getting released. The dates on there tend to be fairly random. I just wrote in my notes, you need to keep your wits about you with this because things just appear. I went onto Microsoft Teams the other day in a meeting, and just as I was chatting away with someone, I noticed that all of the icons at the top had moved around. The put your hand up was completely separate from the other things that you can do, like the applause and those bits. And then only this morning I started to work in Teams. And I was looking for my device settings because I was using a different microphone over the weekend. I just couldn't find it. It was hidden 3 layers down in the menu now, whereas before it used to be on the first click that I got to on the ellipses. So yeah, keep your wits about you with there. Keep an eye on the roadmap and become familiar with that. The URL's quite long, so the best thing to do is have a look in the show notes or just search for Microsoft 365 roadmap. Be aware that there's a number of different types of tenants there. So there's the worldwide tenant, which most people will be on, but there's also a government tenant, the GCC tenant, and then the Department of Defense, the DoD tenant. So if you see mention of those, then they are not really relevant to what the majority of us are doing. And have a look at the different areas in there. We can search by product, we can see what's in development, we can see what's rolling out, and we can see what's launched. Not always very accurate, but yeah, keep an eye on that and keep your wits about you and be ready for surprises. So often things will appear without anyone having known that they're coming.
Brilliant. Great advice there, Anthony. Megan, what's your advice?
Mine is similar to Anthony's in terms of keeping on top of things. But I really think if you're a champion, it's likely that in your organisation there is more than one of you as champions. So my advice would be make sure you're getting together as champions, make sure you're sharing that information. If you are looking at the roadmap, make sure you're sharing that with others and that you're getting the information from them as well. It's not just a one person job. We want everyone to work together to make sure that everyone's using it in the right way. So my main thing is come together as that champions group, as that champion community, and find a community as well for other champions and share knowledge within there, because you'll probably find out a lot more than just what is in the roadmap as well.
Fantastic. Yep, great advice. I think that community around champions is really important, and being able to share that information, distill it to those colleagues inside your business. So I think my advice does relate to both of those things in some way, but my advice is all around just giving it a go, having a play with it. Now, depending on what the features are, what you're looking at, you can either do that probably in your production tenant in a safe space. So have a set of teams that are there for champions to try new features out, have a set of documents, repositories, etc. Or if you want to try some of the more advanced features out, then possibly have a conversation with your organization about having a test tenant. And I think between myself, Anthony, and Megan, we have 3 or 4 different test tenants where we can go and try different things without fear that we're going to break a production tenant or God forbid, a customer tenant when we're trying out new features and functionality. So I think having that lab, having that playground where you can go and be free and try the features and learn from your mistakes without having any kind of real concern of the ramifications is really, really important. I don't know how you both kind of test out the features and understand what to recommend and what to implement. Anthony, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Well, as Barry said, we have 3 tenants that we can use. We can use our live tenant, which is often where I go very carefully just to make sure I'm not showing clients things that they shouldn't see, because that's usually got the most live information on it, and it's the best place to demonstrate how we utilize teams and channels and tabs within our organization and how we build those up and use those effectively in the business. We've also got a demo tenant. I've also got my own personal tenant, so there are 3 places that I go to demonstrate different functionality. If I need to go into the admin console, I generally will go into my own personal tenant because I know that there's nothing in there I can really break because it's just myself and my wife on that tenant, so it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. But yeah, it's good to do that, and I just pick up on that point: is go and play with things, go and try things out, and yeah, it's not going to break anything.
And Megan, obviously, when you're doing training, I think it's both important for you to have a safe place to do that, but it's also got to feel realistic, hasn't it? You need some content there. You need some scenarios, really.
Yeah, so we set our scenarios up. We tend to do it as Cadbury chocolate, purely because chocolate is more interesting than IT at times. I can't say all the time because, IT is my job. So we set scenarios up where we've got a team, then in that team we've got files we all work on. I think the thing with it as well, if you aren't lucky enough to have that demo environment or another environment, if it's things like meetings, I always encourage people to give their colleague, their friend a call and say, I just want to test some stuff out on this meeting. Can you jump on this meeting with me? And just do it ad hoc. It's not got to be something that you do on a live meeting where you're putting everybody in together mode and accidentally turn someone into a cat, if that was even possible. But actually just jump on a call with a couple of your colleagues, or if you have a social call, just say, I'm going to test some stuff out in this call. If it goes wrong, I'm really sorry. And I think people enjoy that sort of testing it before they're then thrown into the deep end and using it live as well. So yeah, if you have that demo environment, definitely set it up as a scenario, know what you're working towards, so then it all comes together, so it is more realistic, so you can see how you could use that. But if not, test it out with some close colleagues that, if you do break it, aren't going to get upset because they understand why.
Fantastic. Great advice there. I think it's really good to kind of keep up to date, share with your colleagues, have those kind of lab or demo environments that you can play with what's going on. So let's dig into the content then. So Anthony, Megan and I have been drilling through the Microsoft roadmap. I can't remember how many features there are in total at the moment.
451?
Yeah, 451 features currently in development, 141 currently rolling out, and 871 features launched. Not quite sure how far back this goes. I'm sure there's been a lot more launched, but a lot of information there to take in. So we can't share everything with you. One approach would be to review everything that's coming out this month, but we've taken a different approach. We've kind of looked through and we've picked out some that features that really mattered to us, really thought that they would make a difference or would fix a problem that maybe that we see in Microsoft 365. So we're going to do 3 rounds of this. So guys, don't give everything away in the first round. But Anthony, what is the first feature you want to talk about that you found on the roadmap?
So I think I'll start with Teams. So Teams is where I spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time trying to help people use it more effectively. And as I just mentioned in the introduction, the Teams kind of toolbar, the Teams experience is changing on a fairly constant basis. And they've built in a lot of kind of usability improvements in there. I remember, I think when we started working with Teams, there were 3 or 4 options on the top menu there. Lots of things embedded in there, but things like changing the different views you've got in Teams. Things like, as I said, they've split the raising a hand piece from the other reactions, so that it makes it a lot clearer. One of the features that I'm really looking forward to is one which is the auto lowering of hands. So when you put your hand up in Teams, until recently or until now, it just stays up. And often I'm hosting meetings and kind of thinking, oh, has that person asked their question? Do I need to go and put their hand down? Are they going to put their hand down? What it will do now is listen to, if you put your hand up, it then identifies that you had a conversation with the people on the team, and as soon as you stop, it will now lower your hand automatically, and that's a function that isn't there yet, but will be coming in the near future. Breakout rooms is another thing that we use quite a lot in training sessions, but the problem is it's up until now it's only been the organizer of the meeting who's been able to create the breakout rooms and set them up. But there's now a new role coming in the future, which is to have a co-organizer for those breakout rooms, so other people can come along and move from one room to another, configure who's in each room, put comments into rooms, and allow that help you in managing that process, which means that if you're running the meeting, you can get on with doing what you need to do rather than worrying about the logistics of those breakout rooms. The third thing about Teams, and I know lots of people will have heard about this, is the new Teams Premium add-on license. So this is giving you a lot more functionality. There used to be a Teams Advanced Communication license that you could buy to help you implement some of the security features and some of the branding features around Teams. What they've done is taken that functionality, build it in with lots of new functionality, and add a new Teams Premium license. So you'll be able to do branded meetings. You'll be able to have intelligent recaps of meetings where an AI element will sit there and look at those meetings and decide who's been allocated actions, what the key topics of the meetings are, and allow people who have been in the meeting to go back and look at that recap, or even if you haven't attended the meeting, to go and see a very succinct review of what's gone on in the meeting. The one I've had the most fun with, and just reaffirming what Barry was saying about try things out, has been the live translated captions. So we've got a few people in the organisation who speak other languages, and what I've been able to do is have a meeting with them, and for them to speak in their foreign tongue, and for the closed captions on mine to instantly translate that. That's quite a useful thing to have, especially if you're working with people or working with teams of people from across Europe and further afield. So that's quite a good one, and a great example of where, trying it out and knowing how it works and knowing how you set it up. It wasn't as obvious as I thought it would be, but yeah, so as soon as you've explored that and tried it out, then it's well worth. You see how best to use that, and that's another advantage of trying things out. You can see where they bring the real benefits. Lots of other things in Teams Premiums, and it's worth having a look at those. There's a lot around security. If you're doing webinars, then there is a lot more you can do in the webinar environment, but it's worth exploring that. And they've set up a kind of concept called virtual appointments. So you can brand an appointment, you can get someone to book an appointment with you, and you can configure that almost like a meeting policy. So yeah, lots going on in the Teams bit, but I've talked a lot. I'll let someone else talk about theirs.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anthony. Some great features there coming to Microsoft Teams. More of a collection of features in your first point there, but it's all good. Teams Premium, I think, is going to bring together a lot of features that I think many organizations want. I think there's probably going to be a little bit of, for want of a better word, disgust that there's another license to pay on top of your existing licensing for those features. But that's the way of the world, I suppose. It's costs are always going up. Megan, what's the area that stood out to you, or your first area that stood out to you when it came to the roadmap?
Well, Anthony almost stole one of mine there with the virtual appointments that's coming with Teams Premium. I think that is a key one. If you ever used anything like Bookings before, it integrates Bookings and Teams together, but allows you to see like a waiting room of people that are waiting for their appointment, how long they've been in there. You can send them a SMS message as a reminder to attend that appointment, and if they're waiting in the lobby or the waiting room, you can send them a message saying, I'm running 5 minutes behind, I'll be with you. So a lot of advancements coming with virtual appointments in Teams that I think will be really useful. And some of the examples that Microsoft have been using are like doctor's surgeries or people that have multiple sort of calls or multiple meetings with different people. So you can see who they're lined up to be in a call with as well. So that is a good one coming in February 2023, I believe. I say 2023 like we're going to be talking about 2024 already. Coming in February, supposedly. The next one is still in Teams and will allow you to have timeline markers in meetings as to when your name was said. So if, for example, I missed a meeting, but people were giving me actions, they were talking about things that are to do with me, every time my name was said, there'd be a marker in that timeline. I can click that marker and go straight to that point of that meeting so I can hear what actions I've been given or what's been said. You could do that before when it was in Stream. You could search your name, and if it had been mentioned, you could find that and jump to that bit. Obviously, you had a bit of background work for yourself to do in terms of making sure the transcript was there and then searching for it. Now it will be automatic that you see that within that meeting summary where you see the chat, the files that were shared, all of that within there as well, the whiteboards, etc. So I think that would be really good, especially if you missed an action that was given to you in a meeting or you missed the whole meeting. Just really makes that more succinct rather than you watching another 2-hour meeting back. So that one again is coming in February in the roadmap as well. And then the last Teams one, because Anthony got a few, so I'll take a few now as well, is that you're able to, or you will be able to mention everyone in a team chat. So tagging and mentioning people is becoming ever more important in Teams to make sure you're getting the right notifications across to the right people. At the moment, if you have a chat message with multiple people in, you have to assume they're going to see it by sending that message. Or if you did want to tag people, you would have to tag everybody individually. So at Barry, at Anthony, etc., etc. Now you will be able to put at everyone, and everyone in that chat message will be tagged and will get that notification so that you can make sure they've seen it. So a small one. Tagging always seems like such a small change, such a small thing in Teams, but makes a massive difference as to how effective your message is and who is seeing it and what notifications they're getting.
Fantastic. Some great features there. Another little gaggle of features rather than one specific one, but it's all good. I'll let it pass the first time, guys. But certainly some good useful features there. Certainly the app mention of a group of people I find really useful. I found that chat messages have really kind of found their own in some of the groups that I work in. With that more social conversation, you just want to grab everyone's attention and go, there's this work thing we need to just make sure it's happening. I find the chat messages are quite reactive, whereas the Teams messages might take a little bit longer for people to get into their channel messages. So I think that's good. So from my perspective, we've got to have a look at the list, and it was one specific area that stood out to me. It was probably because the name of it sounded a strange, very strange. So this is another Microsoft Teams feature, and the title is Ultrasound Howling Detection. Which I thought, what on earth is that about when I saw that in the list? So it's one that I had to click on, I had to read more. And it is one of those ones that I thought, this is a problem that I see every week, and this is really going to help us. So let me read you the description as it appears in the roadmap. So when multiple people join a meeting in the same room, then a feedback loop is created, which causes an echo. And in most cases, the echo quickly escalates to howling, like when a musician holds the mic close to a loudspeaker. Now, we all know that. We've all been in a meeting where someone's joined the meeting on their laptop to be able to present something up on screen, and all of a sudden we're all being deafened by this loud screech inside the room. So what Microsoft are going to be doing is they're going to be able to detect when someone has used a laptop to join a meeting, that there is already someone in that same room in the meeting with their audio on, and it would automatically mute the people that then subsequently join to stop that loud screeching sound. And as I say, this is one of those features that weekly I'm in meetings where this ends up happening. I don't think it's that user friendly when you're in a Teams room. They haven't mentioned how this is going to coexist with Teams rooms, but hopefully, if not initially, later after it will. So the GA on that is March 2023. If anyone wants to go and keep an eye on that and look it up, the reference number is 92391, which you can go and look up in the Microsoft 365 roadmap as well. So really excited for that feature to come. Mainly for me is because it makes technology a bit more transparent. And as I've said many times, that's one of my life goals. People shouldn't have to think about technology. It should be able to just do it for us. And that's an example of where the technology is doing it for us. We don't have to worry about what's going on. So, Anthony, we're back to you.
So I won't go on too long this time, but I'm going to choose whiteboard. So whiteboard is one of the most interesting bits for me. I like to draw endless pictures for people to explain what's going on. And therefore, to a certain extent, whiteboard in Microsoft Teams was a little bit disappointing to start with, because we couldn't share it externally and because it had fairly limited functionality. But there's been quite a few improvements in that area. The first one, which is actually out already, is the ability for us to launch a whiteboard from a Teams Room device. So if you're using a Microsoft Surface, or if you're using something like a Neatboard, which is fantastic, then you can just launch a whiteboard from the device itself. You don't even actually have to be part of a meeting at that point. So if I walk into our boardroom and start writing, want to start writing on the Neatboard, I can kick off a whiteboard for a session from that, and then subsequently invite people to it if I want to. So that's brilliant. It's given me all of that functionality. The great thing that's coming on to whiteboards in the near future, it actually says January 2023. It's not there yet, but it could be there by tomorrow, because that will be the end of January 2023, is that we'll be able to put Microsoft Loop components onto the whiteboard and start to use those. So it's just awesome tools to be able to communicate and collaborate in that way on the whiteboard. Very visually, you'll be able to see who's writing where, or who's filling in which element of a column or a table or a bulleted list at any point on there. Couple of little things while I've got where we're thinking about Teams rooms. There's some new functionality which will allow you to use any device as a Teams room remote. And there's also, what I've noticed is that the kind of old discussion about whether we're going Android or we're going Windows for Teams room devices seems to be going away, because there's kind of almost absolute parity between those devices now. So yeah, love whiteboards, and really looking forward to the new functionality that's coming out over the next 12 months around those.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much, Anthony. I've got some more coming on whiteboard in a minute, so we'll expand upon that then. But Megan, what's next on your list?
Next for me is probably one of my favorite apps in Microsoft 365 with Planner. In January this month, so we've got one day left, you should be able to see Planner templates in the web version of Planner to begin with. So when you go in, there should be some pre-built templates by Microsoft that you can open up, start your Planner from there, and then you can expand and build on it. So things like the buckets, things like example tasks will all be in there set for you already. You can then go add the additional information like labels, date, assignment, all of that. So that's a good one for me. I think a lot of people, when they are starting to use Planner, maybe don't know how to start it, what to start the buckets with. So even if you're not using those templates, if you have the option to look at them, get some ideas, and then build your own, then I think that's a really good one. Just another thing that isn't on the roadmap, but if you are somebody who uses the same planner, same template over and over again, and there's not one already for you in the new templates coming, the way I do that and work around it is create it, get it all ready, save that as a template, and then just copy that plan and use that as the newest one that I'm using. So create one as your template, call it event template, for example. And then when you are starting to plan an event, copy the plan and then use that new one rather than your template. But hopefully these new templates should do a lot of that job for you.
Definitely, no, good tips there. And I know copying a plan is something you've used for a long time, specifically around repeatable activities like planning marketing events or something like that. Once you've got your buckets and your tasks, you capture that and then you use that each time. So really good to hear that Microsoft are kind of creating that concept of having templates, and it'd be interesting to see how they lay things out in there.
Yep.
So I think we're back to me now. And I've picked something that is a common problem we see in Microsoft 365, and this is how we access and handle files in Microsoft 365. As we all know, there are a number of different locations where files can be located, whether that is in SharePoint or in OneDrive, or then accessed via Teams in either of those locations, whether it's in a chat, whether it's in an email. And quite commonly, we find that organizations try and replicate what would have happened in the old days of technology. We go into File Explorer and access it via a network share using the OneDrive Sync client or something like that. And whilst that's not wrong, I don't thoroughly agree with it. We're trying to move to a new modern way of working, and Microsoft has really got some way to go to make it a little bit more accessible. So we've got a new feature that's listed coming out for GA in March called the new Files app in Microsoft Teams. Microsoft built this as one place for all your content across chats, channels, meetings, and M365. Manage and organize and locate the content you need quickly and easily. In addition, wayfinding is more consistent and familiar to users. So I've got this theory that the new desktop is Microsoft Teams. And where we are going is Microsoft Teams will be the place that you go to jump off to wherever then you want to be, whether that's having a conversation with someone, whether that's in collaborating with someone, whether that is opening Word or Excel or finding a file that you need. Teams is the new way to do that. You jump on an unfamiliar PC, you get on Teams via the web or the client, and you can find what you want. So I'm really interested to find out what this new experience is like. If it's easily accessible and you can maybe organize it, but what's important to you to be easily accessible, it could potentially be the new place that people use to access their files wherever they may be. There has then also been some rumors around changes coming to File Explorer and Windows 11 that will make those cloud destinations more native and less kind of like an added on feature afterwards. So really looking to see where this goes. I don't know if either of you have got any other thoughts or opinions around Teams files in Microsoft Teams, but I see this as something that could be potentially quite interesting.
Yeah, I just hope this is the thing I've been waiting for the last 3 years. In that it gives us a nice, almost a replacement for File Explorer. I don't think from the wording that it actually is going to be that at this stage, but I think we're long overdue a nice replacement for File Explorer, which doesn't require kind of, will give us the opportunity to sync files, but doesn't make it 100% necessary. That will give us a kind of familiar look and feel for managing those files within the Teams environment, that we'll be able to find things that are in a team or in a chat or elsewhere within my SharePoint environment. I hope it's what I think it is, but I'm willing to be disappointed at this stage, especially as I think it's due by the end of next month, and I haven't seen any pre-releases on it yet.
Definitely. So Anthony, back to you in the last round of your selection from the roadmap. So what's on your list?
So I've chosen Viva. I use Viva quite a lot, but not really learning and topics. Never really had the opportunity to get my head around those. But certainly Viva Connections, which is the ability to embed your SharePoint intranet into the Teams client. It's always just been disappointing that when you run up the Teams client on an iPad, you're not able to access that your internal website or your SharePoint website on that. Apparently, by the end of March, we will have support for Viva Connections on iOS iPad devices. So really looking forward to that, because it's just always been a massive gap in what we're trying to do with that. There's a new Viva Connections desktop that is due in March as well, which will replace what we've got at the moment. with some more like the card-based environment. We need to be careful with that. There are settings available to put it back to the old layout, which is probably what we need to do with a lot of the intranets that we've developed in SharePoint to start with, as we start to adopt the new interface. And then on Viva Engage, which I'm getting used to calling Yammer now, or Teams Communities, then we've got the stories functionality. It's been there in preview for a while, but that will go into GA in March, which is that ability for, rather than just have a community that we, and join communities within Viva Engage, to actually have individual pages where we can publish our own stories and people can follow us. And we've tried that out internally, and I think it works well and fits very well with just work-related conversations from particular people within the organisation. It's a great way to share information. And so, yeah, looking forward to seeing that being rolled out across the people in our organisation who don't have access to the previews.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Megan, what's on your last of your list?
Well, it's scary how in sync Anthony and I are, because mine is Viva related as well. So mine is the fact that praise that you received via Teams or Yammer, I can't get used to calling it Viva Engage yet, that you get via Teams or Yammer will appear on your card. So in Teams, when you hover over somebody to see their status or their phone number, etc., when you see all that information, like their organization and all of that, there'll be a little card on there that shows the latest bit of praise they received. Obviously, that's just a small thing, but actually, if you missed that being posted on Teams, if it was posted on a team you're not part of, it's just nice for everyone in that organization to also see that praise and have a look at that. And if you see it, then you can go back and give them praise as well and say, oh, just seen your praise on your card, really great to hear that, etc. So again, one of those small features, probably not going to be life-changing, but actually a really nice feature for people to start using, boost morale, and to share that good news within your organization.
I hadn't seen that feature myself, but what an amazing feature. I think that really amplifies further the way that the praise feature can be utilized, and certainly something that I would encourage people to use. I think the praise also comes into what's the feature around kind of well-being and checking off at the end of the day.
Insights.
Yeah, Viva Insights. Yeah, because it offers you the opportunity around, is there someone that needs praise, I think, as part of that process, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you were in the virtual commute and I thought, oh yeah, I haven't actually praised Anthony for being a wonderful colleague, as I do every day, I would get that reminder in the virtual commute, post that to Anthony. He would see that in his chat if it was on that one-to-one basis, but then it would now be shown on his card, so it wouldn't just be kept between us. Everybody else would be able to see that as well.
Makes sense. So my last features all extend on Anthony's discussion on whiteboard, and quite interesting to see, actually, if you type whiteboard into the search on the Microsoft roadmap, you get 3 pages of roadmap features coming to whiteboard. So it really shows that Microsoft are taking that to the next level and willing to invest in that. One feature that I haven't noted on there is getting rid of the tapered pen. I really don't know why on whiteboard you've got to have a tapered pen that when you write needs to taper off towards the end of your pen stroke, trying to be like a fountain pen or something like that. Give me some nice Bic Biro type or Sharpie type pens that can be nice, big and bold, and I think it's a lot easier for everyone to read. But anyway, that one isn't on there. The ones that I have picked that are on there is the ability for a timer to be added for a whiteboard. Really nice way of doing a timed whiteboard session while you're facilitating a workshop or something like that. Just going to drop the whiteboard, the timer on there, set it to 5 minutes. Right, everyone go, fill up your ideas, have a kind of mind map session or whatever that would be. The next is the ability to comment on elements on a whiteboard. I understand it. Not quite sure how this is going to be implemented, whether it's going to be Teams-esque down the side or whether you can select a point on the whiteboard and add your comments and thoughts. Hopefully the latter, because I think that would work really well, that you could almost go around and comment on ideas or expand upon those features. So that sounded really good to me. And the final one that I think we're waiting for now, I think one of the terminologies that was used elsewhere was leveling up. And that's almost what we need to happen with the whiteboard app. So I think it was last year there was a revamp of the web-based whiteboard tools. So that was available, I think, within Teams and on the native Office.com interface. We're lacking behind, I think, on the iPad, on Windows, etc. Now we've still got the old experience, and you get some quite weird experiences when you chop between one and another, and some of the features aren't available on the legacy client against the new client. The Windows one, which is an important one to me as a Surface user, is due to come out shortly as well. So the code on this one, if you want to look it up and keep an eye on it, is 82094, and that is due in February to be released as well, I think. So hopefully that will come out soon. I don't know, actually looking at that one, if that was last year rather than this year. So waiting for a further update. Maybe that's not the right code to be tracking, but it would be good to see all of the whiteboard applications brought up to speed from that side. But the other features there, the timer and commenting GA in February 2023, and whiteboard templates are GA January 2023 as well. So this is the ability to set up a whiteboard and save it as a template, much in that way that Megan said around Planner. If you regularly do workshops, or you regularly want a form to be able to do your own mind mapping exercises with your own components on it, you can do it and then save it as a template. So I think that's a really useful feature and functionality. So before we kind of go to the wrap-up session and talk about what's missing, is there anything else that anyone is itching to talk about that they saw on the roadmap? Megan, I'll let you go first. Have you said everything that you were itching to say, or is there anything else you'd just like to get in?
For once, I have nothing. For once, I will keep quiet and not say anything because I've said all mine.
Fantastic. Anthony?
The only one I wanted to add there was PowerPoint Live. There's now the functionality to, or planned functionality for you to be able to magnify the slide yourself, or for anyone who's looking at a slide to actually magnify it. So it might help with my eyesight at times when people write things far too small for me on slides. I'll be able to magnify them, or the presenter can magnify and can zoom in a little bit on a particular element of a PowerPoint slide. I've not seen how that works yet, but I know that's on its way somewhere. So yeah, that was my additional one that I didn't get out earlier.
Fantastic. I think my only one that really stood out to me I didn't know was coming was in Visio Online, which I don't know if many people know is actually included in quite a lot of Microsoft 365 subscriptions. So this is an application that allows you to draw flow diagrams or organizational diagrams or system diagrams. Been around for a long time, but the web version is quite easy to use and quite accessible. Lots of new features coming to Visio Online, so if you've not checked it out already, have a look at it, have a look what's new on the roadmap. But there's a mind map feature coming to Visio for the web. Now, this could happen in one or two ways. If it happens in a very traditional Visio way, it will just be a set of stencils that you can drag on to an empty grid to be able to plan a mind map out. What I hope is it's more like some of the features and functionalities we see with dedicated mind mapping tools that are available on the market. So maybe very keyboard accessible. So you can very quickly do a brain dump into a mind map and use the keyboards like the enter key or the shift key or the tab key to tab it out and things like that. It'd be great if it was going to be a bit more interactive like that. That was supposed to be released GA in December 2023, but I did have a look on our tenant and I couldn't see anything to do with it. So be interested to see what happens when that's released. So as we go towards wrapping up now, Microsoft quite often at things like Microsoft Ignite or Build talk about and demonstrate features that are going to be coming to Microsoft 365, but then sometimes we never see them and maybe they're never on the roadmap. So a lot of the time they're still in works, but they're just not listed in the roadmap. So Megan, I think you highlighted a number of those that you couldn't find on the roadmap, but we feel are still coming from Microsoft after they've been spoken about in the past. Do you want to get us started?
Yeah, so the first one is mesh avatars, and this is something we've spoken a lot about on this podcast as well as to our thoughts and opinions around mesh avatars. But they are, when you join a Teams meeting, you either have your camera on and you see you, or you have your camera off. What it will be is like a I want to call it a Sims character because everyone can relate to The Sims. It's like a Sims character of yourself where you've created it, you can style your hair, your clothes, etc. And then rather than seeing you, that's what people see. This avatar you've created. Um, we've seen it being used. They've used it in things like Ignite, like you said, Barry, to actually present a few sessions. I've seen a couple of Microsoft presenters and a few people in the inner loop of Microsoft posting on LinkedIn about using it. But when you go on the roadmap, it's not there at the moment. So whilst it's one I'm skeptical about, it's one of those ones that I'm really excited to come into play, that we can test it, we can see how it works. And for those people who don't normally have their camera on, to maybe feel a little bit more comfortable by putting their avatar on. So I'd like to see when that's coming. Hopefully it's soon because I know a few people have been testing it um, in the private preview as such at the moment. And then the next one was Loop. There didn't seem to be a lot about Loop in the roadmap at all, whether that's components within Teams and whatnot, or just the full Loop app, which there was a lot of conversation, a lot going on with Loop app when it was first announced at Ignite 2020, was it? But again, it's not on the roadmap. There's nothing about Loop on the roadmap as far as I could see. So quite interested to see where they are with that and what's happening, because I think there was a bit of confusion as to how it will integrate with Teams and sit side by side with Teams rather than just being another application that maybe crosses over with Teams slightly. So yeah, another one that's not on there, but excited to see come into play when it does.
Definitely. Anthony, I don't know if there are any to you that stood out as not being on the roadmap, or maybe features that you've heard about and not sure where they are today.
I don't think there were. No, I've not had a chance to spot any. I did notice going through the roadmap. There's a lot of stuff around Purview and things in the kind of back end compliance and security piece that were of interest to me. But yes, I haven't had a chance to really go through and look at those in any more detail. But no, I think the mesh one is the one that I'm interested to see, just to see how it can be used and how people will use it. Because as Megan said, we have colleagues who just almost refuse to turn their cameras on, and I don't know whether it makes it very difficult to interact with people if you can't actually see anything. You just see their initials. So hopefully people can go to that point of bravery where they can show their little avatars and work on that.
Definitely. No, I think that's really important. And the extension of that for me was Microsoft Mesh in total. So Microsoft
Yeah.
Mesh is this virtual reality concept that's
Mhm.
available. Obviously, the avatars were stage one. The stage two, which we were hoping, I think, would be available around May this year from when it was spoken about Ignite last year, was this kind of virtual reality concept. Now, be interesting to see where that goes. I know Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and Meta have been under quite a lot of pressure as to whether the metaverse is actually ever going to happen. I think we did actually see Microsoft close down their VR service the other day. So AltSpace VR, that I think we've all used previously, was closed down this week, I think. And I think there is some discussion that the people that were on that project are now being reallocated to Microsoft Mesh in Teams, much to the kind of mixed reaction of the community. I think if you're an organization, that's a positive thing. I think if you were an avid user of AltSpace VR, which there were some quite big communities on that platform, I think that's quite a big disappointment to them. So be interesting to see where that goes. The other thing, which I'm not quite sure where it is on the roadmap, is this whole improvements to Microsoft 365, or the Office app as it used to be called, being rebranded as the Microsoft 365 app now. We've slowly seen some of the features appear there. I think we've got continuous scroll available now when you go and look at your recent items. There were other features and functionality promised to be coming to that, such as organizational templates. And that is a problem that I think lots of organizations have, where to publish your templates in a unified place that could be managed by a brand team or a marketing team or a comms team or something like that. So be interesting to see where these go. So before we wrap up then, any further thoughts, anything to share with our community before we say goodbye for this episode?
No, nothing from me.
we have silence. So it's all good, I think, from that perspective. So thank you ever so much for watching this episode of the Adopt 365 podcast. If you're planning a project around Microsoft 365, Office 365, and you want to work with the technical training or coaching teams here at Computable, then please reach out to us to see how we can help you and point you in the right direction. Just a reminder, lots of organizations are now in a position where they're renewing their Microsoft 365 licensing. So if you're not responsible for that, maybe pass it on to the person that is. We at Computable can help you make sure you get the best value for money, including our training platforms and things like that in the cost of your Microsoft 365 licenses. So it'd be great to hear from you if you're looking to renew your licensing now. Thank you very so much for listening to this episode. We look forward to speaking to you on the next one. Cheers.